Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Let's keep it brief then, I'll start. I'm Simon, I run Future Perfect. This is Richard. Hello. Tell people a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I started working for Simon about a year ago. I do a lot of the press releases for Simon. So when we get a new band booked, then it's my job to obviously create a little profile on the band that can go out on our social media formats. As well as that, I run all the shows, which is known as repping. And that just means I deal with all the bands, make sure they've got their riders, which is basically their kind of food and drink for the afternoon. And I also look after all the support bands, which would be people like yourselves, local acts that come in, and active support acts for our touring bands.
Guess that sounds like I do nothing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Simon just sits on a laptop trying to pretend to work on.
Yeah, so we probably set up Future Perfect about 2.5 years ago. I've done pretty much every job in the music industry before that, so been a band manager, run venues, done merch on tour managed, done quite a lot of different roles within the industry. So we noticed there was a gap in Oxford for promoter bringing in touring bands. So yeah, 2.5 years later, this is where we are. You know, a few people in the room I think have played gigs for us. Is that right?
Put your hands up if you've done a gig for them.
Where's the Cuba Common at? And no one repping the Cuba Common?
A band I didn't mention was TMA as well.
TMA?
TMA, we've got a couple of guys down here.
Hands up. Cool. Where's White Girl Wasted? Where are you at? Hey, there we are. Cool, man. Yeah, a lot of bands here that we've obviously worked with, and then a lot that we'll be hoping to work with over the next year or so.
A few people have been in touch.
Yeah, man, yeah.
So I think keep it brief, don't want to bore you. Loads of background. Figured like we'll just sort of sit here and you can ask us some questions. We'll take it from there.
I also do quite a lot of writing. I write for a whole bunch of publications, so if anyone's interested in the music journalist side of stuff, don't do it because no one pays you. I'm joking, come and chat to me afterwards and we'll talk about that too. Awkward.
Anybody got a question?
Yeah, I guess just if anyone's got any questions, give us a shout. It's quiet now.
Do you remember that lesson we did when I said form 3 questions? Now's your big moment. Callum.
On Callum.
What got you into music promoting?
Well, I sort of started when I was about your age. I guess you were all around 17, 18, is that right? So I sort of started when I was about 18, which is a long time ago, in Wolverhampton, which is where I'm from originally. Just sort of started putting on some gigs with some local bands that I liked, and it sort of went from there. And then there's a big venue in Wolverhampton called the Civic Hall. Got invited to work there basically. They offered me a job off the back of what I was doing. So did that for a little while and then ended up at the Academy Group chain, so you know the O2 Academies. So I worked at the Birmingham one for a few years. As a venue manager, I wasn't really doing any promoting there. And came down to the Oxford venue, same thing, and kind of decided I wanted to go back to being a promoter, because it's much more fun.
What sort of bands do you generally like promoting?
What bands do we promote, or what bands do I like promoting?
What band do you like promoting?
Good ones. That's a bit facetious. Generally guitar bands, but you know, we've done things like reggae shows in the past, and a few pop shows, things like that. But generally what you would describe as indie rock.
I think as well as doing touring bands, we've got a real vested interest in kind of promoting Oxford music. And we've had it recently with bands like the Easter Island Statues and Be Good, whereby we've taken them from, you know, kind of being on support acts on a relatively small show to bringing them right up to do their own kind of sellout shows. And that's something we're really proud of, that we can like build these bands, continue to work with them. So
Yeah, I think there's a few others there as well. Is that right? August List, Willie J. Healy, London.
Another question.
Charlie.
So what are the venues in Oxford that you operate in?
We pretty much do most of the venues. From Jericho, we put Gas Coombs on there last year. The Cellar, Modern Art, the Bullingdon, and both the rooms at the O2 Academy. We don't tend to use the Wheatsheaf or Jericho particularly often, do we? But other than that, we pretty much do everything at the other venues.
And what would you say is the most successful night you've ever put on?
Well,
This guy handles the money, so I can't answer that.
I guess in terms of Oxford, the biggest events we did last year, we did like Slow Dive at the Academy, which sold out, Loyal Kana, which sold out at the Academy, and we did a festival called Ritual Union, which was all the venues on Cowley Road basically, which was pretty big. So in terms of Oxford over the last couple of years, yeah, they're the big ones.
What was your favourite last year?
Can't ask me that, it's not fair.
Did anyone come to see Idols at the Bullingdon?
Woo!
Can I check that? Nah. We're having a good
Rats was supporting,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. That was a special night. But yeah, there's been some really great nights over the past couple of years. So yeah, we're really proud of how it's gone.
Paige. That's dance, by the way, in the background that you can hear.
So is it like set hours, or do you work around your own social life timetable thing?
Social life. There isn't one.
That was going to be my next question.
No, it's certainly in the busy times, so there's sort of key windows when artists are touring, so it generally runs from the end of January through to middle of June, and then nobody's really touring, so everybody's sort of then playing festivals throughout the summer. So for those months, you pretty much don't get a lot of free time. Obviously a lot of the events are at weekends, so you miss out on a lot of family time and things like that. But obviously being the boss, being self-employed as we both are, we do get to set our hours a little bit, we get to sort of pick and choose. But obviously if you've got an event on, then you have to be there, one of us has got to be there.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit like being at college, you can coast through a lot of it, but then you need to know when you need to work your ass off there sometimes. So.
Yeah, there's certain times you have to be there, and you obviously can't be letting people down if you're not. But on the whole, so the other touring window then would be middle of September through to middle of December, so you do get like a nice couple of months off during the summer really, where there's not really a lot to do.
Do you handle a lot more of the heavier genres like hard rock and metal?
We've had we've had a few metal acts. We had Holding Absence, was that? They're a kind of new, kind of screamo kind of act. It's not really our MO as such. We tend to, like Simon said, we tend to prefer the kind of the indie rock side of things, but we're always open to these kind of bands, and there is a bit of a scene in Oxford for that kind of stuff, but I think at the moment there's a bit of a decline in those kind of bands as well, and the punk scene's thriving, but unfortunately in terms of kind of metal in that respect, things do seem a little quiet on that front.
Yeah, I think promoters tend to specialise as well, so there are sort of rock and metal promoters around. So if you are in a band, I think you better go into, a sort of a specialist within your field really. They tend to have people like Buried in Smoke. I think they've got like an audience already there that sort of know those sorts of bands. I think they are going to go to their events if they, whatever they're putting on. So I would always advise that you go to the promoter that's putting on the bands that you like, really.
Indy, you got a question? Pass the mic. Oh.
Have you got any free time at the end of this quiz so that you could give my band a listen to before you leave? See what you think of it?
Absolutely not.
Definitely not. Don't like being put on the spot. No, I'm joking. Yeah, we've arranged to be here for a few hours, so yeah, people want to speak to us at the end as well. Then.
Yeah, you know it. If no one's heard, you know it, you know. Just have a look at our Instagram and stuff.
Just wondering if anyone's got any specific questions about, actually marketing your own shows or how to go about doing that.
Have you noticed Cassette's making a comeback at all?
A few people tend to release cassettes now. Yeah, I think even Truck even do a little section down there, cassettes.
I would say if you're starting out in a band, you want as many people as possible to hear your demo and be able to listen to it. So sending off cassettes that probably 3 or 4% of the population actually are able to have the equipment to use is probably not your best bet. You probably want to be on SoundCloud or Bandcamp. But yeah, cassettes are cool. There's a little weird subculture which seems to be kind of well, I don't know. It's a bit random because with vinyl, you can always say that you've got that sound quality, which cassettes don't really have that kind of quality. So it is slightly bamboozling as to why people want to put stuff out on them, but it's kind of cool. I mean, if someone sent me a cassette, I genuinely wouldn't have anything to play on.
I've actually got a cassette player, but I've got a stacker system. Yeah, get yeah, I think it's an interesting point Richard raises though. I think if you are in a band and you're looking to get gigs, certainly supporting touring bands, then SoundCloud or Bandcamp is definitely the way to go. I think if you are approaching promoters, then you need to be sending them some relevant links. I don't think anyone really likes receiving an MP3 attachment, so even if you haven't put the tune out yet properly, you can do a private link on SoundCloud. So always send a promoter your Facebook, your Twitter, and your SoundCloud link. Often, if we want to get one of your bands a slot supporting a touring band, then what we have to do is send those links on to the touring band's management, and they'll have a listen and then sort of approve it. So we need all those things to put you guys forward and get you on the shows.
Yeah, I obviously doing a lot of the supports get sent a lot of demos, and they don't have to be world-class produced pieces of work, but at the same time, if you think we are sending these on to professional bands, there does need to be a certain level of quality so we can you can tell exactly what the band's about and what you're trying to do. So.
Yeah, I think everybody's been there, haven't they, where they've been at the demo stage and they haven't really got any further. So that's not the issue in terms of the quality, really. I think the touring band are just looking to see that the support are going to sound sort of within the same sort of sonic realm as them, and they're suitable because promoters do put metal bands forward for indie shows and whatnot. So they just want to make sure that that's okay. So normally, I think if you're in touch with Richard and he's sort of discussing a show with you, what he will say to you is, we'd like to offer you the show, but we need to put you forward first. So just because Richard's putting you forward doesn't necessarily mean you've definitely got the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as regards to that, so basically what we do when we approach a band is we put together a little package which is basically a link to a song or two of yours. And also, I know it's probably, it's not particularly cool these days to have like a Facebook page, but, we do probably 60-70% of our promotion through Facebook. And it is quite important, I think, to have a band Facebook page, and to try and like accumulate likes and stuff like that, and just have links to your stuff, because again, it just shows these touring bands that you're a band with a following, basically, because they want the local acts who come in to be able to bring new faces to their shows and our shows. So go on, do without the mic, Sean.
Are you doing anything regarding
Your next
festivals?
Say again, sorry.
Are you doing anything regarding festivals?
Well, we've got Ritual Union, which is happening again in October on Cowley Road. We're also run a festival in Leicester called Handmade, which is based at the O2 Academy in Leicester across 3 days. But yeah, that's it.
Got another question over here?
Pass.
Go on, Jack.
I was just wondering, like, when you work with more professional acts, how do you get in contact with them? Do they contact you or do you contact them?
Well, there's a bit of, there's no set answer to that really. So I think it's important to note we're not booking agents, so we're promoters. So any sort of touring bands, generally they have a booking agent, so that's somebody normally based in London. Pretty much all the booking agencies are based in London, apart from 13 Artists, which is in Brighton. And their agent will come to us. That if it's Magic Gang, for example, want to go out on tour, then their agent will approach all the promoters they work with in each city and basically work it out from there. So I'd probably say 70% of the artists we book actually comes to us because we've already got the relationships with the agents. And then, yeah, the other 30% is stuff that we go out and, you know, it's perhaps an agent we haven't got a relationship with currently, or, you know, it's a certain band that we want, then we'll chase it, and then eventually when they are routing a tour, eventually we'll get the show. But yeah, the big part of it is down to relationships and getting to know the booking agents really, or the band's management, or the band themselves direct.
Kit, you got a question?
Are you guys actually in bands yourself?
So I was in a band. We thought we were going to make it. It didn't work out. And no, I never played again. No. So I dabble a bit on guitar. I used to be a drummer back in the day. I used to play in a prog grunge band called New Metal. So yeah, it was at the time I thought it was great. When I look back, it was really appalling. But I guess that's the thing, man. You need to. I was listening to this interview with this dude from I can't remember, this pretty middle of the road band. But anyway, they were asking. Basically, it took them like 10 or 15 years to get signed. And the guy said, you know, how did you like, you know, stay together and, you know, just keep on working on it? And he said, even when we were shit, I thought we were awesome. And I think that's a real thing. It's something to remember. Like the stuff that you're writing at the moment probably isn't going to be, you know, a year down the line, you'll probably look back and think like, yeah, you know, there's bits we can take out of that, but, you know, it's not perhaps the kind of stuff we're doing, we want to do now. So just remember that this is a one big kind of, you know, like learning trajectory, and don't ever fall in love too much with these songs you've written, because there's another better one around the corner.
Yeah, I don't really play. I realised very early on I was not going to be a good musician. Hence the reason I got involved in what I do now. Anyone else?
Paige? Oh.
You said something about marketing earlier. How would you market and promote a small town charity funded gig?
That's a good question. Probably come and see us at the end and we'll have a proper chat, but I think, you know, there's no right or wrong way to promote any event. I think, you know, if you're doing a one-off event and it's for charity, then, you know, you're probably really going to be relying on getting your friends and family down. I think, you know, like anything, you need to make sure that you've got some good artwork. You create Facebook events, you know, you push it on those social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and, you know, try and get some press, really, Oxford Mail or whatever. If you think that you've got a worthy cause, then Richard writes for the Oxford Mail. Perhaps speak to Richard. But yeah, I think, you know, there's a whole load of things you can do.
I think with any event you do, whether it be as a support act or if you put something on yourself, it's so important to push it to the best of your ability. Like, we love bands like Lacuna Common and the White Lakes because they will actively like push our shows as much as we are, and there's a certain kind of how can I put it? We're both kind of working towards putting on a really great show, and so as a result, if we're all pushing it from all angles, then it works really well. So we really like working with people who've got a real passion for promoting as well as playing the shows.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think if you are playing shows, one thing we get really frustrated about is sort of bands that, like local bands who sort of book 4 or 5 shows in Oxford in the space of 6-7 weeks, and they're sort of promoting all these shows at the same time. I think if you want to sort of create a bit of an event, then you should really only ever be promoting one show at a time locally. If you're Oxford, that's your hometown show. I think you can go out of town, you can find other shows in places like Banbury and Reading and things like that. Do as many of those as you want, but when you're playing in your hometown, I think you need to sort of think about it, and if you want people to come back and to see you the next time you play, then they need to go away with a warm, fuzzy feeling about the event and feel like they've been part of an actual event. Often we do shows where perhaps nobody's really made any effort and there's 15 people in the room, and you sort of struggle to see how anybody's going to come back to see any of those bands. So I think it's really important that you only ever promote one show at a time when you're in a band. I think you need to push yourselves. Obviously our job is the promoter, we do promote the shows, but it's great to see local bands really like pushing themselves as well and really trying to sell their share of the tickets. I think if everybody's doing the same, then everybody's got a great night, you've got a busy gig.
Oh, Will, I thought there was a hand up. Oh, was the scratch? Corey.
What's the longest tour you've ever been on? Like with a band you've promoted?
Well, I mean, we generally promote in Oxford and Leicester, Wolverhampton, so we don't really promote full tours. Does that answer your question?
That's probably a slightly different job in the industry. It would be like a tour manager who actually goes out with the bands and goes from venue to venue, ensuring they've got their hotels or what have you.
Or like a band that you've promoted, like what's the longest tour that they've done, sort of thing? So like a band that you've sort of brought up, and then they've sort of been taken on now, and then they're on tour. Like, do you know?
I guess Willie would probably be the best example of that. Like I don't know if he's embarked on his tour yet, or if there's one coming up in 2018. But he's going to be doing like a multi-day tour around the UK. I mean that's the goal really for any band, is to get that 10-12 dates in the diary where you travel around the UK and really kind of turning bands from like a localised kind of murmur into a national thing is it's a real tough nut to crack, and if you can do that, you've done pretty well.
Yeah, I think I mean, like I say, we only really promote Oxford, Leicester and Wolverhampton at the moment. We do some bits in other cities, but yeah, I think if you are in a local band, if you want to generate a wider buzz, then you do need to generate a buzz in your hometown first and foremost. So often, I mean, I've worked with a lot of bands over the years. Some of you will probably know a band called Peace. So I did their first ever gig, put them on with the Vaccines in Birmingham. When would that be? 2012. And basically, they went on, they gave Justin from the Vaccines, they had these really cool t-shirts at the time, they gave him one of their tees, and 2 weeks later he was on the front cover of the NME when it was still a decent mag, in their t-shirt, and they sort of generated a buzz from there. So I think, it's important to play with touring bands. I think those shows, you learn from those touring bands. and some bands I've worked with over the years have gone on to do quite well and get signed by playing shows with touring bands and making friends with those bands and staying in touch and having those bands sort of recommend them. So there's a band from Oxford or just outside called Hayes. I don't know if any of you have heard of them, but they supported Shane earlier last year for me at the Cellar, and they've now got a booking agent because of that, because they went back to their agent and said this band were the best band who supported us on tour. So I think, you know, it can happen. You can use those shows to help build a bit of a buzz. But yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot of bands over the years that have gone on to great success. I've done their first shows or whatever, you know, or worked with them from very early on and helped them build their own audiences in their hometowns.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on the idea, I hate this word, but the idea of kind of networking when you're at when you play a show as well. Like quite often I'll see support bands come in, do their slot, clear their stuff out and off they go at kind of 8:45 at night. And you really want to be building relationships with really anyone you can, you know. The industry is built solely on reputation. And if you make a good impression on someone, like you say, you know, 6 months down the line, they could be out on a tour support and they could say, you know, we need a tour support for this. Oh, you know, what that band in Oxford? So yeah, so just hang around at shows, just chat to people, you know, ask questions, you know, just, yeah, learn the industry.
I think Van Zella are really good at that, actually. There's a band from Bristol called Van Zella that I've been working with for, well, since they started, really. They were friends with some guys from Oxford and they came up to one of their shows, introduced themselves to me and said, we've got some demos we're working on. When it's ready, can we send it you, will you book us? And they've played quite a lot of shows in Oxford now. What they're really good at is sort of getting to know the bands they're playing with, and then they'll go to events like Dot to Dot in Bristol and they'll just get chatting to all the bands. And off the back of that, they've toured with Spring King. Tarek from Spring King actually produced their last 2 records, and they're friends with Blind Arvin, and you know, just as they put them up at their house, they're all studying and all live in the same house in Bristol. And I think that's a really proactive way of making things happen for yourself. Is, you know, come along to some shows, bands that you like, and try and chat to them at the end, and you know, you can then from there follow up and send them your music via social media and whatnot. I think it does work really, really well.
Next.
I'll ask a question.
So for any, oh my goodness, I've realised how quiet you guys are all talking. So for any of these guys who might want to start a publishing company, what advice and guidance would you give them?
Don't bother. No, I think it's like anything you do in life, really. I think you need to be professional. You need to be reliable. So if you're hiring a venue, you need to make sure you can afford to hire the venue. You can afford to lose the money if you don't sell enough tickets. I think that's really important. If you just cancel the show on the day and you're letting the bands down, you're letting the venue down. Obviously, the venue's hired their room out to you for the night, and if you just cancel on the day, then they've got a dead night which they could have hired to somebody else. So I think, you know, like anything you do in life, really, is be nice to people, work really hard at it, and make sure you're reliable.
I think what Simon's particularly good at as well is kind of spotting bands and trends before they actually happen. So it's really important to kind of, you know, have your ear to the ground as regards, you know, new bands that are coming through. I mean, I think the UK scene at the moment is incredible. We've got some really, really wonderful acts and a real diversity there. But, you know, part of Simon's job is just always looking for that new thing, because if you get on it early, then obviously, you know, it will become profitable for you later when you do larger shows with them. So it's so important just to have a passion for the scene as well, man, and just make sure you're always kind of all ears to everything.
Yeah, I think the key thing is not to just do it for the money. I think you've got to, you know, always work with, if you want to be put on your own shows, then you've just got to work with bands that you like, because it's very hard to sell something that you don't like, isn't it? So You know, we tend to, on the whole, I'd say 90% of the artists we work with is because we like them or we love them.
Yeah, apart from the Unicorn.
Yeah.
Let's go to Dicks.
Any questions from Shire? Callum?
That's not enough questions.
Have you ever worked with any folk acts?
Yeah, occasionally over the years. Probably can't think of one right now.
We had CC Smugglers, and they're kind of folkish. It's not really. Again, it's not necessarily our MO. And also, there's a lot of that in Oxford, and there's a lot of other people doing that in Oxford. We wanted to bring in something different, something perhaps a little edgier. No disrespect to any folk fans out there. So yeah, it's not necessarily a genre that we would have a great deal to do with, but you know, a couple of hay bales in a barn, and yeah, you've got yourself a folk.
Oh, we've got another question.
What key features do you look for, like a band like an artist, when you start working with them to like promote?
Like a local act, or
like any person you start working with, or like band.
So again, if we use the example of like the White Lakes, like they are really, really passionate about what they do. They really believe in themselves, which is amazing. You know, self-deprecation won't really get you very far in this industry. If someone says, "What's your band like?" and you go, "Oh, yeah, you know, we're not that great," you know, then I'll assume that you're not really that great. Whereas, you know, bands like the White Lakes and Kuna Common really care about it. They really push themselves and they really believe in themselves, and it makes it a real privilege to kind of work with bands like that because, yeah, it's just, yeah, the passion's there, man, and that's the most important thing.
Oh,
oh, good. Oh, God.
If like a new band or artist approaches you, what will be the sort of main processes you go through before sort of promoting them or trying to get them gigs or anything like that?
Well, I think again, it just goes back to that thing of being professional and polite. So, you know, if you just get an email that says, "Giz a gig," then you're kind of probably just going to delete it. Do you know what I mean? So, I think you're always going to go off your gut instinct. So, if you get a nice email that's... And some bands just will literally get a load of promoters' email addresses and then just copy and paste the same email, forget to change the name. You know, those sorts of things are quite frustrating. So I think a nice, politely worded email with some good links that you can go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, hear some music. That's always a good starting point, you know. Those sorts of emails, I've always emailed straight back. Just say, look, we'll try and find you something and we'll be back in touch, you know?
Yeah, it's just, I think, as well as that, yeah, just like, obviously just being as professional as you can. I know you're all young people, but yeah, I don't, like, I had this one band, we booked them, and then they said they couldn't do it, and I asked why, and then they gave me this huge spiel about, oh, the drummer's, he's snogged my missus, and I'm not chatting to him anymore, but we got this new guy in, but he smokes too much weed, and do you know what I mean? Like,